This has been a long time coming, but now it's time to review the game that I had beta tested earlier this year, Mango Mischief. Welcome everyone to the review of Mango Mischief. I'm going to be doing things a little bit differently today. Today I'm joined by a fellow beta tester for a kind of co-op review. Welcome to the channel, Bestiarii.
How's it going, you guys?
What's up, man? Yeah, this was actually this was your idea to do kind of a co-op review.
Yeah, I figured since both of us were doing we were both doing the beta testing. Why not do a collab and review it together?
Yeah, the beta test, I was quite surprised. Chris had reached out looking for some beta testers. I was still relatively new to content creation, so it was really great that he reached out and basically reviewing and doing his the review for his game was kind of a catalyst to kind of catapult me to where I wanted to lead my channel.
Well, the funny part is, the way I actually got in contact with him was I started playing Final Fantasy IV and was streaming that, and he actually contacted me and we started chatting, and that's how I got into reviewing. Well, not reviewing, but beta testing Mango Mischief.
Oh, very nice. He sent me it was a tweet, and then we were kind of talking through tweets and then personal messages, and they asked if I was interested in beta testing this game, and I was still relatively new to content creation, trying to look for my guidance in this vast world, and I'm like, sure, and then it just kind of catapulted from there. It was a great experience.
Oh, it was an amazing experience. I loved every second of it.
Right. So to tell us a little bit about your content, Twitch, YouTube, what it is that you do.
So for my content that I usually do, I stream between retro, um, first person shooter kind of games, multiplayer games, horror games. I do a variety, but mostly I try to stick with a lot of retro because that's the kind of content I love to stream.
Right. That's your niche, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, I also, as most of my viewers know, I like to stick with the retro style, but also, again, Chris's game, his beta test was the catalyst to make a big focus on indie games as well. So, but let's jump right into the review, and I want to get the most obvious part out of the way. And I've seen some Steam reviews about the direction that his game takes, and seeing that the game kind of holds your hand a little bit too much, and that there's signs that point out the obvious. This game is a satire. It is not meant to be taken as seriously as other RPGs or JRPGs. It makes fun of itself. It is quote unquote. It's a meta. It makes meta references. It's kind of crazy the way he was able to write the way the story is going to go along. And some people were kind of bashing it for that, and they seem to not understand that what they're bashing was literally the point of how he wrote the game. This was the purpose of it, was to make fun of all other RPGs and to try to be a little bit different. And that was something I really appreciated about his storytelling.
Yeah, because most of the RPG games nowadays is everything is so cryptid and like so focused on puzzle solving and stuff like that. So that's why he wanted to make something a little bit different that you would not really expect in an RPG type of game.
Right, right, and his game does have some puzzles in it, of course, because what RPG doesn't? But again, those puzzles are he likes to use the self awareness. The game is self aware. The characters are self aware. Like the puzzles are designed in that particular manner to poke fun at exactly what you had just mentioned.
He also does like to do a lot of like poem type puzzles.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, they do get a little confusing because I'm not the best with poems, but the way he words each and every single one of them does give off like hints. Okay, this is what you have to do, in order to get the information that you need to get the puzzle correct.
Right. I remember originally talking to him during my time as a beta tester. I'm like, "Are you an English teacher?" He's like, "No, I'm actually a math teacher." And I was quite surprised because of the way his writing was. He actually seemed like he was very articulate with his storytelling and his poems and his little signs that were all around. But it was really surprising to find out that he was a math teacher. And the first time I was playing through, he had that one town that was completely dedicated to like math puns and math jokes, and I didn't realize it until I started playing the final version of his beta, because I tried his second beta and then his final beta, and I didn't realize those jokes at the time.
There was actually a lot of sections in that game that I had to physically write notes because of some of the parts having
Yep,
math,
I did the same
uh,
thing. Yep.
having math sections.
All right.
So
So let's make the transition into the game itself and the gameplay. It's a really solid RPG. It's your run of the mill, your turn based, well, not really active, but it's yeah, the turn order up in the corner. Everybody has their magic, their health bars at the bottom, and your list of skills. And it played very, just like any other RPG would play. You had your overworld and such.
the way I saw it, it kind of had a lot of reminiscent to like the original Final Fantasy style. That's the way I saw it as because I grew up playing those kind of games, so it kind of gave me that feeling of playing it like that, which I found to be amazing. I loved it. I loved the style of the battle. Um, I do like the fact that in the corner you can tell who's going to be attacking next. So basically, you can plan your attack in that correct order.
Right. It did get a little frustrating at times because you would see the attack order, and when somebody would throw an attack out, the turn order actually would change with no manipulation of any kind of stats. So it's not somebody was slowed down or somebody was killed, and then the turn order would change. It was very strange at certain points where you would throw out an attack and then the enemy would attack, and then all of a sudden their portrait would just slide in between two of your characters and attack again. It was a little confusing at times too, but I guess that just the way the statistics of the game had worked out, it was the only way to get it to roll that way. Not really 100% sure. Chris didn't have any programming background until he designed this game. I still have no programming background, so
I
however
don't
it was
either.
done, I'm sure it was done on purpose.
I think would have helped with that situation to like not confuse players too much is maybe have I don't know if that kind of program can handle it, but like have a monastery, not monastery, but
Numerical, maybe?
bestiary. No, like a bestiary guide explaining like their attack power, defense, their speed, and stuff like that. So that
Oh,
way you
okay.
can tell,
Okay.
like say this person has like 20 speed and this person has like 25. Okay, this person's going to go again because their speed's a little bit higher than your characters.
Yeah, I've seen some RPGs that have the Bestiary included into the I'm sorry, not the Bestiary. That's your name, Bestiary, included within within the menus of the game, so you can get a little bit more in depth with the stats. Some of them, even in more modern games, would allow you to view like the 3D model of the character. Get close, look at the textures and such. That would have been a cool addition, but I feel like as a solo indie dev, that's something that you would decide to leave on the cutting room floor for the sake of time and your sanity.
Yeah, yeah, incredibly.
One of the things that I was actually not really a fan of was the fact that there was way too many skills, and I mean a lot of skills. When you actually do the math between all of the different character classes, I think max level, if you were to go from 0 to max, was 250. And I think that was a little bit overkill. And there was a lot of skills that I didn't end up using, some of which I may have only used one time in certain particular scenarios. But there was a lot of skills that I left alone because I found this one attack pattern that was so effective. It's like, why even bother with the rest? So I think the amount of skills, it started to get to be a little bit, a little bit too much.
To me, um, what granted, I did like the fact there was quite a bit of skills to choose from. And again, I agree with you that some of the skills, you did use in the beginning, but sometimes they weren't really as useful later on in the game as they were before. But what I wish happened was that each individual person got different skills. Some of them actually got like the same type of skill over and over.
Right.
So when most of the characters like two of them had the same type of skills like to the T, to the like the bone, and then some of them didn't. It didn't give a whole lot of variety for the um the characters. But overall, I the skills were pretty. I did like the skills, but I just wish there was a little bit more different for each of the characters.
Right, right. I feel the same way. Like characters like Marrow and Arak. That's basically your white mage and your black mage, but they also had dark and white magic attacks together. But Arak was the only one that could use healing magic, whereas Marrow had more of the elementals. But then you got characters like Sprig and I always mix up the two of them. The one,
Marion.
Marion, yeah, Sprig and Marion. She's more of like your thief character, so I was expecting to have more speed and less attacks, whereas Sprig would be a little bit slower, but much more of a powerhouse. And I was kind of thinking I was going to see some more skills for Sprig in terms of physicality, or not physicality, because he had a lot of those more defensive, more like in Final Fantasy VII, you had the cover material, and you would give that to somebody. They would cover an ally to block an attack and eat it themselves versus somebody who would be weaker. There wasn't as much differentiation between them. At one point, Sprig had a couple of the elemental attacks, and then Marion had a couple of elemental attacks. So the way it was structured a little bit, I feel like the way the characters had some certain skills assigned should have been a little bit differently. Where if you were going to have a character dedicated to white magic, it should have been purely white magic. You know, the luminary, the healing, maybe some holy spells, and then your black mage would specifically focus on the elemental aspects of it.
The way what I was thinking is that the way he made Iraq, I think the way they made him was more like a red mage, the one that can learn a mixture of white and black magic.
Okay.
But when it but with a red mage, you're only supposed to learn a certain amount. You can't learn just about everything. You can learn like so many spells of fire, so many spells of cure, any kind of healing spells.
Right.
But the way it was made was it seemed like he was just as powerful as Marrow with the kind of spells that both of them can use.
Right. 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 And the one thing that was a little confusing too, but I understood his reasonings behind it were the elemental affinities. You know, obviously dark versus light. I kind of figured that water would have been or ice would have been strong against fire or vice versa, but it was actually water, and then ice was strong against what was it?
Lightning, I believe.
Lightning, yeah. I would figure lightning and water would have been the two counteracting, and fire and ice would have been counteracting. But he explained it to me, and I honestly forgot because it was so long ago why he had chosen it that way. So there was a couple times I got tripped up, but eventually I started remembering, you know, which ones were strong against. Which one were stronger against the other. And it also wasn't like a triangle or a circular. It's just like one is opposite the other. One is stronger and one is against. It's not like it's, you know, fire is strong against, you know, earth, where earth is strong against wind, where wind is strong against this. It didn't go in a circle. It's just each one had an opposite, and that was it. So it was nice that it was a little bit more simplified.
Yeah, because it went from fire and water, and it went lightning and lightning and ice, and then earth and wind,
Right.
and it was vice versa. You know, one was weak against and powerful against one another, pretty much.
Yeah. All right, I want to move on to the story, and you know, back to when we had first opened up, that this game is a satire. It is meant to make fun of itself. The main driving force to games is a MacGuffin. That the term a MacGuffin. He calls the MacGuffin the king. Literally, his name is King MacGuffin, making fun of itself, which I thought was pretty funny and pretty clever. He did say the Queen also has a similar name, but I actually don't remember what her name was. But King MacGuffin actually stood out pretty big to me.
I do want to say a small thing. It's just a pure joke. But I thought about when I started streaming this when he was calling MacGuffin. At most points, I wanted to call him McMuffin.
That's funny. King McMuffin.
But the way the story goes through, with having to, the king disappearing and having to search for him and going through all these different types of levels, different types of caves and stuff like that. Um, I thought it was a pretty cool idea. I haven't really seen much of an RPG game go that kind of route. So,
Yeah,
it's different, and I thought it was a pretty cool idea.
yeah. I like the direction. What I really liked about his writing was the mystery behind the overall plot. It's like you have these four characters that come together. They all need to see the king, and the king is gone. So they all depart to try to go chase after him, and you're literally one step behind him the whole way through. And every time you finish a dungeon, you're granted with a small cutscene. All the characters are off on their own, and it's all a preface to their time showing up at the to see the king. So you're getting a little bit of backstory between all the characters, and every time you run through a dungeon, the scene got a little bit longer and a little bit longer and a little bit longer. Some people might find that a little bit annoying. Others might actually say, okay, it's great that we have that little bit of a refresher and then a little bit more added on so they remember what happened again as it gets a little bit longer. And it keeps your interest peaked to find out what is going on. And by the end of the game, you realize that there's actually a much deeper story to each of these characters individually, which I really appreciated, especially for Arak. It was kind of a gut punch when you find out what really was going on in Arak's personal story. That was very well done. That was my favorite one.
Yeah, finding out about that was definitely like heartbreaking towards like the end there, finding out what his backstory was. Um, but one of the ones that I found to be very different and very unexpected, except for the fact that, in the flashbacks he kept switching the characters, was not Marion. Marion's backstory.
Yeah, hers was
That
a
was
yeah. Go ahead.
that was very unexpected. I did not see something like that. I thought maybe it was um like when they kept switching, I thought it was like sisters pretty much, but no, to throw that at the end and to tell the players what was actually going on, that threw me for a loop.
Yeah, yeah, that was definitely a nice surprise too. And again, it's like if you just commit yourself to the game and appreciate the jokes and you slowly get the world building and as the story evolves, it has a very great payoff at the end and it very unexpected in certain cases, which I really appreciated.
the one thing that well, the one thing that's going to confuse a lot of people until they get to a certain point in the game is during the cutscenes. There's going to be there was silhouettes of the characters that kept confusing. I know it confused you
It
too, but
did.
it
It
kept
did.
confusing me. I was like, is it like doubles of the characters or like what's going on here? Is this a glitch or something?
Yeah, that
Only to find out it like kicks you in kicks you in the ass at the end. It's like, oh, okay.
yeah,
Now we know
yeah,
what's going on.
yeah. That was also very very nicely done. Again, Chris's writing and being self aware was a real treat to see throughout this game. And again, people need to give it a chance to really appreciate it and get that payoff.
One of the things I can say is if you are a huge fan of RPG games and you love having that retro feel and just love fourth wall breaking and all sorts of like jokes and stuff like that, I highly recommend getting this game. It is very fun to play. It's very soothing at some parts. Granted, there is some parts that are very frustrating, but again, what RPG game isn't?
Right, exactly. Going on with the retro style, the the visuals of the game, it's another thing that some people need to kind of get past, that games that are made in this engine in RPG Maker tend to look very, very similar. Like it's a lot of the same art, a lot of the same assets, obviously different mixing and matching and such. But it's opened up a gateway for certain people who don't know how to code or who don't think that they can make a game. It'll allow them to do just that. And that was the case here with Chris. He had all the intention of wanting to make a game at some point. It was on his bucket list, but he never thought it was going to happen. And this program allowed him to fulfill that portion, check that off of his bucket list. So yeah, it may look similar to other games, but again, people need to kind of get past that. The visuals look really good, just thinking about it without, knowing that this engine is used by multiple people. You can also import your own art, but obviously Chris didn't have those capabilities to find somebody to import all this. He did all the work himself, which again is an impressive feat in and of itself. But the engine, it did all the work that it needed to do, and yeah, it looks like something else. But the big touch is his writing.
See, I've worked around with some of the RPG makers because I actually own one of the programs. Well, I bought it off of Amazon and stuff like that, but I've worked a little bit around it because I'm currently trying to make myself a game as well. But the amount of time and dedication that you have to put into this is like time consuming. I mean, physically time consuming of how much you have to put into it between the writing, the sprites. I grant that the program does give you the sprite, it gives you sprites and stuff like that, but you got to work around the clothing, you got to work around the designs, you got to work around between enemy placement, where enemies going to spawn in, how big you're going to make the map, where you're going to put each individual chest and stuff like that, um, where to put certain types of dialogue, events. There's a lot to work with in RPG Maker, and it. What I don't think people understand a little bit about is, yes, it uses a lot of the same features, but it's just the dedication that people are willing to put in to their game, like how Chris put so much time and effort into Mango Mischief, and to have so many beta testers and finally able to have the game come out on Steam.
Right, exactly. And also going into the sound, I'm pretty sure that also applies to the same as the art. A lot of the sound effects are possibly reused throughout all the different games, but it looks and it sounds exactly what he advertises as, a retro style 16-bit esque RPG, and it did exactly what it set itself out to do. I don't know about the music per se, although because the one track for the Chaos Castle, that big like heavy metal track, was one of my favorites. Like I'm wondering, is that an asset within RPG Maker, or was that something he was able to outsource to somebody to include into his game? But it did exactly what it wanted it to do.
The thing I've noticed that what you can do with some of the sounds in these kind of programs is that you can actually distort them a little bit, like either make them higher pitch, lower pitch, the speed, the tempo, and everything else. But I do agree. I think he might have had somebody make like an actual soundtrack for that final area for Chaos Castle and put it into it, because that was nothing. I have never heard of a theme like that before. It came out perfectly. It sets the mood. I just love it overall. It definitely fits that particular area.
Right. I want to kind of double back a little bit more to the story, not necessarily the story, but more in terms of the design. That he had a lot of different little Easter eggs, a lot of hidden stuff, even bad math jokes, like I had mentioned in that one little town. That he makes all different kinds of pop culture references very subtly within his game, and little nods here, like there was a nod to the Lion King, there was a nod to Final Fantasy and such, and all of those things were very appreciated, especially if you are a avid RPG fan and you've played a lot of RPG games like we have. Seeing those references in there and the way he included them so very meticulous and particular about how he put it in there. It was definitely a treat. It made me laugh, made me smile on stream, and it's exactly the reaction he was trying to get, and it worked.
A couple of the references that I noticed that he put into it was there was some from I don't know if you've heard of Mystic Quest, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest.
I've heard of it.
Okay, he did make some references to that. He's also made some references to Undertale, which I thought was pretty cool. That was not
Yeah,
expected, but I
those
like that.
those I missed. I missed the Undertale because I've never played Undertale. I mean, hell, he's got a reference to the Konami Code. I mean, come on, you gotta appreciate that.
That's true. That's very true.
Yep. That was a great, and the thing too is that reference, I did not get it, even though I went through the motions. He told me later, like, oh, that was a reference to the Konami Code. And I'm like, how did I not even figure it out? Because if you know the Konami Code and you know that that's the reference, you're able to push through a lot faster without having to try to figure it out and have to use your brain. That was one of you'll know what section I'm talking about where I had to write something down. But I don't want to spoil it for anybody who may happen to play the game and get to that, the later stage of the game where that comes up.
Now, there is actually one question I do want to ask. This is a little bit off topic, from what we were from, the notes and stuff like that. But when you were playing the game, was there any particular area that you like physically enjoyed going through? Like, it didn't. It doesn't matter if it was because of the music, because of the way the area was set up. What was your favorite area to physically go through?
The funny answer about that, it was also the most frustrating to go through, was the grotto, because the aesthetics, the water, the calm music was just so nice and relaxing. But then doing the puzzles where the holes in the ground kept appearing and disappearing and kept resetting you was frustrating as hell. But the music and the aesthetics were just so pleasing and calming. It's crazy, the double edged sword right there.
Still can't believe that one section that you went through, like you physically just kept going and somehow you did not get hit. Where I struggled for probably half an hour getting through that part where you made it look so damn easy.
He told me that he's never seen somebody go through it the way I did. I actually went through the wrong way, and I was able to figure out a different path than what he had originally laid it out to be able to make it through.
So the area I physically loved, it was between the music, the way everything looked, and just the visual of it, was the volcano.
Yep, that was a good one too. My laptop at the time wasn't able to run it very efficiently. Obviously, when I go through and play it now on my new rig, it's going to be a lot smoother and a lot better. Like, I'm a big like fire elemental. That's like one of the things I really like. So that's another place I would really enjoy going back to. Obviously, as I'm replaying through it.
Mhm.
Um,
But that
yep, go ahead.
that was my that was my all-time favorite area to go through. Um, the only small thing I didn't particularly care for was just a certain enemy. Unless you had an item to help protect you against them, it was just a drag trying to get through some of those
Yep,
battles because of
yep.
that one particular enemy.
Yeah, the game does make you think a little bit. It keeps you on your toes. So you can't just power through it like some other RPGs where you can just roll right through.
Yeah, you actually have to think strategically, equip certain items to protect you from non-elemental attacks, or what's it called? Is it affinity?
Yeah, elemental
No.
affinities or
Yeah.
yeah, something like that.
Oh, status effects. That's what it was.
Status effects. Yeah,
But but other than that, the design of the level, the music, and how the tempo changes when you get to a certain point, I thought that was amazing. I love that.
yep. So one more thing I want to throw in here before we start wrapping up. I know he actually took and I really appreciated this too, is that he really took the feedback from all of his beta testers, not just you and I, but all of his beta testers to heart. And I know that there are certain sections of the game that that I personally had direct influence in, like the design of the very first, like was it Hargoth, the castle, the castle walls. I didn't like the way they were designed, and I asked him, I was like, "Can you do this?" And he literally changed it and made it look so much better. But the one reference that I really liked was in the town of Pytha, which was the math town, pun on the Pythagorean theorem, is you got him going. You had this one character reading off numbers, and I told him, I'm like, you got this whole math town. How do you not make reference to the Fibonacci sequence? And he's like, I got you. And he threw it in there for me, and I thought that was great.
See, I wouldn't have recognized that. I probably wouldn't have recognized that. But the way he ended up making these kind of math problems when it came to that part, it did confuse me at first until I started rereading it and like taking a closer look. But the way that he made it, I thought it was pretty clever. I liked it.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's the number one word to sum up this game is clever.
What else was there? Oh yeah, there was also some parts that he has taken in consideration when I was doing some of my recordings and showing him. Um, there was actually in the snow level, there was a part in there where he had a chest that had something in it that you weren't technically supposed to get until you had one of the items. I found a loophole and got it, but he managed to notice that right away.
Ah, so he closed it up then.
Yes.
Ah,
And
okay.
another thing is in one of the boss battles where you're technically supposed to answer questions. I found another loophole that I'm glad he spotted as well. Technically, you weren't supposed to be able to kill the boss.
Yeah, yeah. You weren't supposed to physically kill him. Like the whole point of that particular battle was more of an intellectual battle, which again you don't see that in a lot of RPGs. So to have a boss battle that was supposedly supposed to be pure intellect, that was a great addition.
Yeah, to have a boss battle and to have to answer questions while in the battle itself, and the fact that you're only allowed a certain amount of wrong answers, because if you do that, you
Yep.
messed up.
Yep.
You're dead, and you got to restart everything all over again.
Right. Exactly.
So that was a nice little touch that he did to that.
All right, so I want to wrap this review up. Overall, the game is a very, very solid RPG. If you can get past the point that it's made with RPG Maker and it looks similar to other games, and the game is purposely holding your hand and making certain references. I mean, hell, there's a place that's called the Meta Reference Mansion, for crying out loud, in the game. It is 100% worth your time and your money, especially considering what he's got it priced at. It's only $10. Currently, as the recording of this video, it is only, he has it actually on sale for $5. I don't know if I'm actually going to be able to publish it while it's still on sale. But either way, it's still worth it on sale or not. I would definitely recommend picking it up, especially if you want an RPG that is different, makes fun of itself, is clever, and still has a heartwarming story.
I would say definitely if you're a retro style kind of person that you enjoyed those kind of stuff and you enjoy kind of games that have fourth wall breaks as well as like you said making fun of itself. Um, highly recommend getting this game. Yes, there are some parts that are, you know, tedious and stuff like that, but again, that's every game. There's no game that's out there that's perfect. But if you can look past that, you'll find yourself having a very fun and good time.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you keep bringing up fourth wall breaks because that's something I keep forgetting to bring up. So, but I want to thank you for coming on the channel and having the idea of this co review. Definitely something a little bit different. Also coming from the perspective of two beta testers. And again, we're also giving our honest feedback here. We're not just, oh, hey, we were beta testers. We're just going to inflate the ego and we're just going to talk it up just so he can make sales. No, we're giving the honest opinion. This is how we felt from the beginning and even about the final game. So, Bestie, where can anybody find you? Plug your socials, your Twitch, your YouTube. Where can people find you?
There's a couple places you guys can actually find me. Over on Twitch, you can find me at twitch.tv/Bestiarii92. That's BESTIARRII, sorry, 92. You can find me over on YouTube, same name, just without the 92. And you can find me on Twitter, same name.
Alrighty. Thanks once again for popping on the channel, Bestiarii. Much appreciated. Thank you again, everybody, for tuning in to the first co-review that I've ever done. Also, first co-review here for Bestiarii. And go out and pick up Mango Mischief.